jump in with a quick question, if you don't mind, Nemo. I was just wondering, there's a lot of good
Sure.
ideas here, but obviously some good ideas wouldn't have been selected. What happened to those good ideas that were not selected?
It depends on the way the terms and conditions were written based on who we were working with, because there were different regulatory frameworks we had to account for. I'll give you an example of one that I think went really well is when we worked with Grant Imahara from Mythbusters, and we were working with Mauser Electronics and NXP. That one was really fun because the idea was around a product that we had already brought to the table, which is the world's first 3D printed car called the Strati. But what we were doing was outfitting the Strati for various different cool ideas that could be to make the Strati autonomous, but then how can we make this a really cool personal mobility device? We got some great stuff. And the one that won was a guy deploying a drone from the back, and he called it the fly mode, where the drone would pop off of this little back area and just launch up, and then it would show you like where's traffic, right? And then it would feed that information into the map system to get a better routing plan, right? Or you could use it for sightseeing while you're driving autonomously and you're just looking at your screen, seeing around you the really, really cool sights if you're in a nice, cool mountain road. So there's all these different really cool functions. However, there were some really interesting ones within there where you turned your personal mobility system into like something for exercise. There would be these like elastic bands you could start doing rows and stuff like that. And then, super, super novel, a little bit harder to execute. As far as a practicality question, there is still some things to work out. The idea was sound, right? In the terms and conditions of that one, since Mauser had no claim to IP, NXP had no claim to IP, they were there to provide components to execute the ideas, right? So since they had no claim to IP, we put in a clause that I think it was like a 3-month gardening period where the ideas were there for us to be optioned first right to refusal, whether they won or not. And then, of course, there would be a cash prize allotted to that based on the value of the innovation. But we still gave first, second, third prize money, right? And the IP agreement was if you accept the prize money, then the IP belongs to Local Motors.
Yeah,
so that's an example of a framework of how we did that.
But do they just disappear then after that 3-month period? Like they just go back?
There's been entire companies that came from people who didn't win challenges that took their innovations elsewhere.
Oh, so they take the information elsewhere and then they still use
it. It belonged to them.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So
Just,
nothing
got
wasted.
First right of refusal. I mean, that's what.
Yeah. Once
it
was past the gardening.
Right.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Sometimes in, like, for instance, in the DOE challenge that we did with regard to advanced materials for lightweighting or manufacturing, different manufacturing methods for lightweighting, that gardening period was a much longer period of time, unless the person who wanted to, if they didn't win, right, wanted to take their innovation to like a manufacturing company, said, I figured out a problem for you. They could get written permission to do that from the DOE as per the T's and C's of that specific challenge, right? So the gardening leave or the non-compete, if you want to call it that, I don't remember. We had specific legal terms. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't remember. But I'm using terms I think we can all understand. I want to say it was like 6 months. Don't quote me. It's been a long time. But the thing was, is there were a few people that had some really, really great ideas that were like, through the connections they made in the co-creation process, had the opportunity to take those ideas to other materials suppliers or manufacturers and stuff like that, and turn it into their own opportunities, right?
So how did Local Motors feel about that? Creating an environment where other organizations are benefiting from ideas which they didn't perhaps use. How did they feel about doing all this work, if you like, for someone else without being paid for it?
What exactly, the way I think I framed it, and I can't speak for anyone else, so I'll speak for myself. What exactly is the downside of being a platform that raises other people to levels of success they might not have seen otherwise? Regardless of whether or not Local Motors benefits from that or not. All it does is proves the model of co-creation. And that means we could still derive value from ideas for our own means, as well as everybody else has the opportunity to do that as well.
Did they feel that way?
Jay Rogers said it best. Yes, Jay Rogers said on a number of occasions when he knew other people were getting publicly, by the way, you can find him online quoted as saying such, is a rising tide raises all ships. Right? Now, coming from the military, and using kind of maritime language is second nature to Jay, but it made total sense in the idea that he wasn't just out to benefit himself and his own initiatives by creating co-creation. It's actually in his original thesis that's not the point. The point is to give people access to networks and the ability to achieve new and fresh ideas, even outside of what the person running the challenge initially wanted. Right?
But
Create those
obviously,
avenues for other
what you were
people to
saying
be
earlier about
successful.
friend DA, NDA, and having these
Friend DA.
ideas which are open
Friend
to
DA,
anyone
yeah.
to use. It's kind of like you're touching on something like the common good. Over
Yeah.
factionalized interests, the benefit of the collective, the rising tide carries all ships. It seems a very similar sort of concept here. Just thought I'd mention that. It just seems to tie back.
Absolutely.
It paid off
Absolutely.
for Local Motors.
It did. It did for many years. And
Yeah.